Hello, happy Monday. This is the first of 6 stories selected randomly from my archive. And this one is in praise of and dedicated to British Airways captains. Now, I had a job that for 20 years or so took me flying around the world in some of the world's crummiest airlines. And this was because I worked for a charity and we were always trying to eke out the very last bit of value from every penny that was donated to us. And people used to say when they heard that I was involved with projects that worked for and with refugees, all they said, "I admire what you do." But not a bit of it. I had the most stimulating and exciting job you can imagine. And in fact, I've been to places that you can't pay money to go to. And I had a mate, and his brother was a British Airways captain, and occasionally the only possibility or the only airline on the route was British Airways, and sometimes they were the same price as the cheapest. And whenever I was booked on a British Airways flight, this BA captain would email the captain of the flight I was going to be on. And his email went something like this: "On flight BA 049 on the 6th of July, you will be carrying Mother Teresa in economy, and if there's anything you can do for him, I would be much obliged. Yours sincerely," etc. And on about 5 occasions, when I introduced myself to the chief steward on boarding the aircraft, the British Airways aircraft, they would recognise me, ask me to wait for a bit until everyone had boarded, and then show me into business class. Well, this was an extreme excitement, given the normal passage that I would take on an airline. On one occasion, I had actually boarded, taken my economy seat, and the chief steward came running up saying, "Oh, Mr. Clark, would you like to gather your things? I've got another seat for you." And the plane had already started taxiing, and of course my luggage, which was extensive, as it always is when I'm travelling some of these places, was spread between various overhead lockers. So it was chaos trying to get through to the business class lounge, but great fun when I arrived. And on another occasion, I introduced myself to the chief steward on boarding, and there was not a glimmer of recognition or any sign of anything. But halfway through the flight, the captain came striding up the aisle, looked me out and said, "Oh, Mr. Clark, I really must apologise. I've only just received the message, but it's too late to disturb the other cabin now. But let me ask you, when you settle down in the evening, what do you like to drink?" Well, I said, I red wine. And he apologised again and went back to flying the plane. Well, some 10 minutes later, the chief steward came up the aisle, this time clutching a carrier bag which contained 4 bottles of fine red wine as an apology for not upgrading me to a seat that I hadn't paid for in the first place. Well, these came in very handy as presents for the people I was going to be staying with on the trip. Another time, my work took me to New York, and on the way back from New York, there had been a lot of heavy snow and many flights had been cancelled. And I was on British Airways, so I introduced myself to the chief steward as normal, and he recognised me, asked me to wait as normal, but then he came up after about 10 minutes and said, "Mr. Clark," with a very long face, he said, "I'm very sorry. We've had to combine 2 flights and business class is absolutely full and I can't squeeze you in." But then, with a twinkle in his eye, he said, "But I've got some seats in first class." And so he showed me through to the first class cabin. Now this was an unprecedented experience, and each of the passengers practically had their own stewardess to themselves. But I sensed that the chief supervisor of the first class cabin wasn't exactly on the same page as the captain, because he came to see me shortly after I'd settled in and said, "Now, Mr. Clark, you won't be wanting to dine with us tonight, will you?" And it was clear that from his manner that he wanted the answer to be no, so I said, "Oh, no, that's fine, thank you," not really knowing what else to say, although I confessed to being slightly disappointed. A little bit later on in the flight, my stewardess arrived and she asked me what I'd like to choose from the dinner menu. So I explained to her that the supervisor hadn't seemed keen on me dining in the cabin, and she said, "Let me just see." So off she went to discuss it with him. And when she came back, she said, that provided she was happy to do the extra work, he was happy to let her do it. What would you like from the menu? Anyway, she said, all the legitimate passengers have stuffed themselves in the executive lounge before boarding, and all they want to do now is sleep. So we've got a kitchen full of food that won't be eaten. What would you like? Well, it was an amazing experience, and she even issued me with my own pair of pyjamas for the flight. But after each of these flights, I always made a practice of going up to the cockpit after landing and saying thank you to the captain for helping. And I always found them engaged, genial, and very interested in everything I had to say about the projects. And all that after a long haul flight. So thumbs up to British Airways captains. See you tomorrow.